morphed into what you call digital space and digital transformation, but in a lot of the work that I do, I'm finding that people are still not taking advantage of some of the things that were talked about in the early days of E20. So some days I feel like I'm stuck in the early part of the 21st century when I work in companies. Because
me too, yes.
I think there's a lot of people whose relationship with computers and the web and hyperlinks and capabilities has never really progressed much beyond surfing the web for weather and info and using Microsoft, some kind of word processing spreadsheet and other package at work, and haven't really delved much into even sharing information other than, say, on Facebook or on Twitter or Instagram or such. I've
right.
an awful lot of commentary and articles about specifically shown up by the rapid attempted shift to remote working, that a lot of people just are really fumbling around a lot.
Yeah, and when you think about McAfee's slates, the search, linkability, all of those capabilities, people are still, I find, when in their work practice and their workflows, don't integrate those capabilities into their sort of common, their common practice, nor do they expect that from their colleagues. So it's, there's a lot
I think you're absolutely right. And if we try to look out 2 or 3 months from now, it'll be very interesting to have this conversation again, because I think people will be much, much more comfortable with digital tools. And I think there's going to be some huge changes in the way companies work.
Yes, I think it's going to be proven eventually
start
that
at this point, because before we enter into maybe we do start early, later on. Actually, this started from the post, and I have to thank John for actually giving the ideas of somehow meeting up again. And I'm very happy to have you all with us here on the digital channel, really to reflect some ideas about where we stand today and what is happening. I mean, certainly the corona for us, especially for us as an event organizer, it's a complete disruption. So we just changed our business model within 2 weeks, and yesterday did our first digital conference because all our old business is gone. And certainly everything has changed out there, for us at least, and people are working remotely now, and all those people that were hesitating or had some issues with digital work before, they now have to work. So, I mean, that's also, for me, I think that's a really disruption also for the digital work sphere. Yes, I mean, we have to discuss certainly how this is changing and what the shutdown really in most of the countries. So in Germany, we have the shutdown. In Italy, we have the shutdown already completely. So, and we really have to think about, and as well, we have to think about what is this doing with these digital workplace projects. At the moment, everybody, or before the Corona thing, certainly we didn't talk about anymore about Enterprise 2.0, but about digital workplaces where we enable people to digitally work together. And certainly there were always people that drove these projects and enhanced or were enabling and pushing this project, and a lot of people within the organization that were hesitating and had issues with it. But now certainly we have a different situation, and certainly we have to think about how we can now enable people instantly to work efficiently and effectively together. And certainly with this crowd, we have a lot of people who thought about the pillars and pieces that needs to be done for enabling people on the way to the digital work. And that's why we're here tonight for this first encounter to discuss this. And certainly, as Jane said before, certainly I think we have to do this on a regular basis, because I mean, the next weeks, everything in every country I think will change. And therefore, it's certainly interesting to keep this as an ongoing project here and meet in 2 weeks' time again, and maybe also get people on there who are just new to the digital workplace matter and help them to move on. But maybe that was my introduction for this, for the motivation to do this. And certainly maybe now we move around and everybody is taking their first part on what you are thinking on how this is changing at the moment and what we have to focus on to help people to get this done.
I'd like to be interventionist. I'd like to be interventionist here. I think that it's important to recognize and state explicitly from the outset that most people, I guess in the Western world and certainly in Asia as well, are already working electronically, digitally linked with their cell phones, with their computers, with the web, and so on. So part of the big ongoing challenge is to make it all into a coherent and functioning system that many people can use easily. That's my assumption starting out.
Yeah. Who else? Well, you all are
really good. That's a good point, John, because I have talked to several very large companies in Paris recently, and their biggest challenge right now, they're very sophisticated in their digital workplaces, but they have at least 50% of their people who are not connected. And that, in particular, one of the very big French banks, and their big challenge right now is to get everybody connected, mobile or whatever. And that's what they're struggling with right now. That's the biggest thing. After that, they will look at how we work together. But first, they have to get people connected.
There's the getting people connected, but there's also the cultural change. I work with, in France as well, a large energy company, and they find that they need to get people to cut off people that are getting stressed out because they don't know how to do this. They're not used to interacting through these digital means. In terms of management as well, we're seeing that middle management is completely lost. They would like to be right behind the backs of everyone, but they can't anymore. So they're trying to find a new ways of organizing to make sure that, well, everything goes smoothly. One thing as well, like this energy company again, like they're installing very strict rules as well, like making sure that people disconnect as well, because they're digital all the time now and working remote. They're saying like at 6 o'clock in the evening, we stop all the connections to the service. No more emails. And it's quite interesting, and that's a major change in culture. It's actually the cultural impact, which is, it's not just the tools, it's the culture that's interesting to watch evolve at the moment.
Mark, to your point, some cultures find it hard to evolve. I posted the other day an anecdote I saw where a team leader put her whole team on an 8-hour WebEx to see them work.
That's, yeah.
Well, that is certainly retrograde. Yeah, but you know, here in Silicon Valley, where people are much more used to network connectivity and tools like online meetings and web conferencing, it's almost been overdone before this catastrophe, COVID catastrophe, in terms of people sitting in meetings all day with the fear of missing out, sometimes FOMO factor sometimes. But I think even with that, they have not been able to really embrace more digital ways of working. Rather than sitting in meetings, there are other ways to sort of have that transparency, as we all know, with enterprise social networks and wikis and more linkable conversational modalities with those digital tools. I would hope that this Yes, deep work. I would hope you can't do deep work when you're sitting in a web conference with 20 other people, that's for sure. And so I would hope that some of this is by necessity, maybe people will begin to explore, but culturally, I think they really need some guidance. I agree with you on the culture factor, Mark.
Yep. And what I've seen from talking with a number of the digital workplace vendors now, for the very first time I'm hearing from them that that executives and leaders are reaching out to them saying, I need your help using these new tools, not just to roll them out. I also need mentoring and guidance, because our managers and our leaders can't be seen to be flailing about in these channels, and they don't have the skills. So I'm hearing requests for change management, executive coaching, and the things that we always hope that these executives would ask for, they would seek out new ways of working. Now the issue is being forced. And so that's why I think it's a very exciting opportunity, because the time to drive change is when things are changing, and things are changing right now. And so I'm very excited to see all this interest. And I think it's an enormous opportunity for those that are practicing in the space to drive substantial change. I think it's going to be, 2 or 3 steps forward and 1 step back once the crisis is gone, but I think we can make some permanent changes.
It does seem like an opportunity to have that magic blend of people skills and technology skills. So for a group like this, it's I don't know, a moment in time where there's some real value in, I don't know, different perspectives of some of the same old challenges we've had for a while, and yet a real shift.
Yeah, but to distinguish.
Well, it was so interesting. I can't remember who made the comment about the displacement of middle management and all of this. So that's a pretty significant issue, I would think, culturally.
Yeah, I wanted to point out that there's also a difference with our scenario with COVID, right? The ones that we're talking about are classical problems for E2O, right? Getting people to use that, getting adjusted to this. But I think there is also new concerns, which are extensions of that, meaning that people are stressed out, people are worried about that. So the reason they don't perform well in live meetings and things like that is, obviously there's some degree of fear, right? Some of it is like what you said, people who have never really worked on this before, now I have to be in a video conference with people, I'm self-conscious about it. Or I've got family suddenly at home, right? All my kids are at home, they're running around, the dog's running around, there's a lot of noise, I can't really work this way. So there's a set of new concerns in addition to the classical ones that we're talking about. Do you see that? Is that common?
Very much. I've seen a number of people, colleagues, etc., and age is not important here. They are completely stressed out because they don't know how to be productive working from home. So they are used to using digital tools, yes, but for them, the notion of work is somehow going to an office and spending the day there with friends or between offices or meeting other people. But it's a different physical space. So I think that for them, they're really struggling with the notion of, I have to now find ways to, of course, use these tools in a way that I'm still productive, that I keep contact with my teams and with my colleagues and with my managers, but I have to do it from a place which for many of them, they do not associate that with productivity or with work. It was like their sacred space, and now their sacred space and their sacred times, and that ties in very much with the notion of the time during the day, and when do I cut off, when do I stop looking at emails or etc. So everything blends now, and for many of them, it's been a real struggle. But hopefully they are aware of that, and they are searching for other colleagues or professionals to try to guide them. So I've never seen as many tutorials or blog posts or wherever on how to work productively from home, because from an individual point of view, I see people really struggling.
And you have now conflicting work styles, yeah, that you see that people who are usually, before they could escape somehow this digital world, yeah, and now they can't, and they have to work together. And now you have, for example, in enterprise social networks, I see that a lot of people, they try to socializing to overcome this distance, yeah, and to be present and share gifts and whatever, yeah. And others, they say, okay, well, no, this is work, so you have to stick, you only have to post the work-related content, yeah. And we have a lot of discussions about this. So how do you live now in this community? So it's well, at least we're having these discussions, I would say. Yeah.
But on the other hand, isn't that the greatest opportunity to have
It
that
is, absolutely.
split,
Yeah.
to have people, they just start now. It's kind of like they're doing their first steps in digital, and there's others which are doing it for now 10 years almost in our area. And they can learn from each other very fast, because it's not about something which might happen, but they can really realize it and see what's going on if they're open.
Yeah, but don't you guys think that people have got other things in their mind right now that are using digital tools? Like, how do I ensure that my family is secure and safe? How do I ensure that my grandparents are, or my parents are, or my kids are? How do I ensure that I have food on the table? How do I ensure that X, Y, and Z? Before they start thinking about, oh, by the way, I need to do work. I think that work right now is taking a secondary place, if you want to call it that way, and people need to secure those things first. So get rid of those problems first before you can focus on, okay, so now what do I need to do work? I find that we're perhaps a bit too fast in trying to help as much as we possibly can.
Yeah,
the opportunity is there.
I kind of disagree with that, in the sense that I think that work provides structure. People looking for certainties. Okay, we've already gone like 10 days, and basically my family's safe. I'm not too worried about my parents and so on. But the work provides me structure in what I do. It keeps me busy, and it's reassuring to be able to keep on going. In other countries that might be quite different, like in the US, you're seeing a lot of people getting laid off at the moment, but personally I don't have that, and work helps me get through the day, basically.
It keeps you busy, but that can only disrupt in one single minute. When your dad calls and says, hey, I'm desperately freaking out, I need your help now, then everything drops. And then whatever you're doing, everything drops, right? So
no, we've been lucky so far. It's
what I mean with that is that we are perhaps the lucky ones because we know how to live digitally, but most people don't. And this is something that for them is a new way of working, if we can say that, but at the same time, they need to secure the other, right? And you mentioned the thing about the temporary layoffs. That's also the anxiety of saying, I could be fired temporarily tomorrow, so why should I care about learning these tools that I no longer have to go and use? Right?
Absolutely. And in the United States, people cannot even get proper health care. Right. I think the US right now is one of the worst possible countries to be living in.
And I would say that it's not just the US, there are other countries where they have got the same situation, right? So there's a lot of uncertainty there that people need to juggle with. And if you notice, I don't know about you guys, but for instance, 2 weeks ago, a lot of the media tools out there, they were having, if you had like 10 posts, 9 were how to work remotely. 2 weeks later, that's pretty much dead. At least on my LinkedIn timeline, for instance. Why? Because everyone has been so saturated and very little response actively from people to want to learn from doing that, that everyone said, no, there's no money to be made here. Let's move on to something else, right?
I think you're right about that to a degree, Luis. And I think in terms of helping people step through things, in terms of being more comfortable, it's the uncertainty factor is going to hamper people's concentration and their openness to maybe learning new things unless it's like of absolute necessity. So I think this whole period is going to afford an opportunity. People will do things that maybe they don't do on a regular basis because they absolutely have to with respect to work. But I don't think it's going to engender that sort of awareness and culture change that we're hoping for.
Yeah, but if you looked into it, at least what I'm saying from my end is I see an obsession to try to mimic almost exactly the culture at the office. So how do you do meetings effectively online? How do you actually become more responsive? How do you actually have that face-to-face social water cooler that I used to have back at work? And to me, that highlights that People just basically want to keep this going for as long as they can before they go back to the office. They're not presenting the opportunity. Now we have the unique, unprecedented, and I'm going to say this, only one-time chance of saying, how do we change the nature of work? Not for today, but for the next one that comes forward. That's a conversation that I'm missing right now.
This is not happening. This is not happening. This is a conversation I see missing. We are being, literally, we've been studying this, you know, I'm the first one. So we have a climate here, unfortunately. And we are still leading. Unfortunately, we are going to lead also in China, maybe. The thing is that nobody's talking about what we've been discussing for 20 years. And with that I mean, starting to work in a more transparent, inclusive, agile way, not just using technology to connect with other people. This is not new at all. And nobody's talking about the organizational implications of that in terms of purpose, in terms of organizational structure, of culture, of mindset, of transparency, and all of that. We're still back at the basics. So maybe I'm a bit too pessimistic, but I don't see much of what we have discussed for the last 20 years happening in this conversation. In Italy, we talk about smart working. And I know it's unique to Italy, but there's nothing smart about it. It's just remote work. It's exactly what we have been doing for 20 years. Everybody's talking about team messaging. So if we think about wikis, about communities, nothing of that is available. It's just messaging among people. It's WhatsApp, it's that kind of stuff. So all the awareness that we hope to bring in the last 20 years didn't happen. So yes, maybe it's an opportunity, but there is still so much work to be done. But that's what I'm seeing.
Well,
hey Manny, really nice to see you. Lewis, let me jump in for a sec.
I was gonna quote you, so go ahead.
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna say exactly what I'm thinking. So
I probably am. You know, I think this is the key point. So one piece of hope that I have is that when you remove the performative theater of management work in the office, and they have to operate through a Zoom screen or a Teams screen like everyone else, actually, it's a bit like Samson and Delilah, whatever. They lose a lot of their power because a lot of their power is essentially about manipulating other people to do work. There was a really great piece on Stratechery, I think today or yesterday, about the way this crisis is showing the difference between talkers and doers. So if you look at healthcare management, you look at government, you look at companies, there are people out there, usually paid a lot less, who are running around 24/7, doing things, saving lives, you know, making things happen. And then there are healthcare managers running around actually not knowing what the hell they're doing and struggling to find interventions or establish rules or protocols or whatever. And so I think in a way, you know, for me, as many of you know, the issue is not a tools challenge. It's not a culture challenge or a behavior challenge. It's a management structure challenge. It's how we've evolved sort of this structure and practice of management as, you know, everything hanging off it. So everything hangs off meetings, everything hangs off KPIs, everything hangs off reporting lines and talking to these people. And I think, you know, what I'm starting to see a little bit is the best managers at whatever level actually saying, you know what, forget about the, you know, me as the coordinator or me as the choke point. I'm going to pick up some tasks like you guys are picking up some tasks. And that means we don't need all the meetings. We don't need the 8-hour, you know, WebEx to align ourselves. We just crack on, we get on, we might have a stand up, you know, I'll pick up tasks, you pick up tasks, and then we run from there. Now, many of them do lack some of the skills and confidence and fluency in the tools. And I think this will force them to either develop it or, you know, get out of the way. But I think the big hope that I do have out of this is that, you know, if we look at what's definitely not going to change. So, you know, we're not going to go back to office as the main mode of working. We are going to stick with remote working. We are going to we're going to need resilient structures that can afford to have 1 or 2 nodes taken out, you know, whether it's a health crisis or a local issue or whatever. And so in a way, you know, I do think we have to just keep our foot to the floor, pressing on this reform of management practice enabled by technology. And maybe we come out of this with a better balance between sort of P2P, self-managed working and, you know, fewer managers who just play a coordination role or a network development role. Even Buurtzorg, you know, were challenged about how they can maintain self-management during a health crisis. And they said, actually, it's perfect. It's working for us really, really well because The nurses groups that we have, we trust, they're very well informed, they know how to make decisions. And so I think there are a few signs that we might come out of this with a cull of managers, and actually the replacement of those people with doers or connectors. And that's really, for me, the big hope that I have.
Yeah, I was going to say culling.
Involve everybody here, so maybe the ones who have been quiet so far, please jump in and also put in your voices.
I just wanted to underscore very quickly, and then I'll step back. I really appreciate your thoughts, Lee, and here's why. Because while we have been talking about digital tools, it is the nature of the interactions that they empower that I think are really transitional. We haven't really talked about communities and networks in the way that would support the thoughts that you're talking about with respect to structural change and changes in management. And I hope we'll, as a group, talk about that a little more.
So just to keep the conversation going, so this would lead to a culling of middle management, or at least cleaning out those that only provide very little value. But what effect would this have on top management? Because I would see voices being raised about what is their value that they're adding in this case. It's like, do we need all those expensive top managers to keep an organization running?
It's an interesting question. I mean, I don't think so, is the basic answer. I spend a lot of my time doing coaching and learning and development for senior managers in, very big organizations. You meet some smart people, there's no doubt. You meet some hardworking people, there's no doubt. But they're in the wrong role. That's the problem. They should be organizational architects and curators and custodians, but instead they act like lone geniuses who, can absorb all the information about about market X or market Y and then make a decision. And if you look at the failure of the German automotive sector to respond to Tesla, that's purely a senior management failure, not an engineering failure, not an R&D failure. It's them. They've got it wrong, right? And this is getting repeated more and more. And in a world of complex problems, I just don't think we can afford that mode where they sit on top of all of our labor and make these decisions. They need to use their definite talents and their connective ability and their strong networks in a different way. So I do see a lot of awareness actually in those learning sessions about that change, but they are also hammered by KPIs and by expectations as well. And so they're struggling to find the mind space, I think, to sort of reimagine their role.
And will the current Corona crisis have accelerate this movement, do you think?
I don't know. What do others think?
Yeah, we still have quiet people in here. Katharina.
So what I want to add is that we are at the moment analyzing the results of a big hackathon here in Germany versus virus from the last weekend. And the interesting effect was that more than 40,000 people interacted with each other via Slack and other digital tools. And the interesting thing was that they were not led by any manager at all. Only 2 roles have been addressed to the teams. It's the role of the moderator and the role of a mentor. So somebody offering help, getting together the people in the network and bringing together the right people. And then the teams just have done their work. And it was so incredible, amazing what went out or what came out after 3 days of doing this hackathon. And it had a big impact also in our company. And we are really now doing this analysis on what can we do to bring this power and speed into our organization in case it's urgent.
Yeah, but Katharina, I also think you're lucky, and it goes for you, Harald, as well, for having the top management focus on this, because I honestly believe that's where the whole problem lies, because the culture and the people in charge are primarily male person, and they've got there because they fought their way up there, and then just not gonna let go like that, and culture is gonna eat it. And I see. Look at you, Selina. I believe you've experienced this over time, where you thought you managed to do it, and then 1 or 2 months later, people were back in the normal.
Absolutely.
The normal setting.
And I was talking to suppliers of my former company, and they told me it's amazing how fast they're able to make decisions these days.
Yeah.
And yes, they are, and I'm not surprised. But then when things go back to, I'm not sure things will ever go back to normal. But when things stabilize, the old competition will come back. Competition between leaders for power, for resources, for visibility. So I'm not sure things will really change. And I would like to add one thought for the, not even I mean, people lower in the hierarchy, those who are not used to working on computers, those who work in small homes or apartments and have like kids to homeschool because of the situation. Let's not forget that what makes sense for us is completely new and scary and frustrating for people who have to share one computer for the whole family with low bandwidth or no way. I mean, it can be terrifying, and I'd like to keep that in mind as well.
Well, I'm having a wife working in the local government here, and she suddenly had to bring her computer home and sit next to her. And I've said the bill I'm going to write the local municipality for support of her for all different kinds of problems. But still they had the things. But suddenly something came up and it was Teams. What's this? He said. Yeah, that's Teams. Don't you know? And they were suddenly going to have a Teams meeting, and I was just sort of saying, well, and they up to now they've not been allowed to actually work from home, which is completely stupid. But again, management wants to look at people. And I love the story about the ones that was in an 8-hour WebEx meeting, because management, some people just can't let go. They're used to that. It's DNA. It's the way they've let companies for free.
But here's the thing. For the first time in like ever, is those same managers and senior managers who are also exposed working from home themselves. Because before everyone else was in the office, they were in the office, and everyone else who had, the opportunity to work remotely or distributedly, they would, right? But now we're all in this together. So they're seeing exactly now the same issues that everyone else like us have seen already. They have seen how the power struggles are happening at the office. They don't completely disappear when you work distributedly because you're exposed. You need to become more proactive, more transparent, more open about what you do. So I saw one tweet, I think it was from Harald about this French company where they were with a Zoom meeting for 8 hours to ensure that everyone was working. Say, yeah, you too, lady, because we can see if you're working or you're slacking off. Now we can put you on the spot because you can no longer close the office door from your own office. So we need to understand that for the first time, all of those managers that we know, and believe me, I'm also one of the folks with Lee that says that management is the issue because it is the issue. All of a sudden, they have got skin in the game. And that's why things will never be the same again. Because when they go back to the office, they know exactly what it is on the other side.
But may I ask
that's our opportunity.
May I ask a question here in terms of between leaders and to make an example? My daughter, 11 years old, gets now piano lessons via iPhone. And the piano teacher has never had a computer. She didn't even have a router in her house. It took us about an hour, and she was online giving piano lessons via cell phone. Why the hell does a person with like absolutely no fundament at all can do it in 1 hour? Because she's curious and she has the need of urgency to say, I want to do my lessons and I want to help those kids. And what I experienced from the top leaders many times is that they are now in the same boat, yes, but for them, different rules apply. So if something doesn't work out, they point their fingers to someone and say, fix it for me. They don't reflect back or ask for help. They just fix it for me. And that's I think in my understanding, the biggest change in mindset needed, that we really work together and collaborate more, even across all those hierarchies. And that's so hard to get into.
But Harald, they have to do it right now. The difference is now they have to do it. And like Louis said, we see them struggling. We see them in their living room. Their dog is barking. The kids are there. We see them in the same situation as everybody else is. So this changes a lot, I think.
And actually, what that does, I don't know about you guys, but I have heard a lot of stories about senior executives embarrassing themselves because that happens, right? And what it does is everyone else clapping because for the first time they see that they have a human leader. They have someone who is a parent, who is crazy about whatever the pet dog or whatever they have. And that actually humanizes them to levels that when they meet people in the office, I can tell you when they go back to the office that the eye contact, the relationship will be completely different. Because now they will see that after all, you are not an asshole. You're just another human being with the same problems and challenges that I have. You're just in a different position. That's going to level of us. I mean, that's what John has been saying about hierarchy, right? It democratizes the way knowledge goes two ways, but also the way people build relationships. We're all on an equal level, and it's how you earn that particular trust through conversations and interactions that is going to basically change management entirely. I mean, theoretically, right? Because, you know, we all know that change is hard and, you know, building behaviors and mindset is going to take a while and everything else. But I think that once you see the light, it's very difficult to admit to yourself that you want to go back to something that you know was worse before. That's the challenge.
I just posted, like, you know, yes, there's probably going to be a good amount of our discussion about what is the situation, the diagnosis, and what is it. But so far, you know, we've been spending all our time diagnosing different areas of what's going on and what's happening. But could we focus on some solutions? Like, what do we do? And we need, you know, there's an urgency here, right? The long-term solutions, they're great, but what are the short-term solutions? What can people do tomorrow or maybe later today?
Well, what I've recommended our community, what I've recommended our community and our members to do is actually now to make notes of all the good stories and all the good experiences, what we're experiencing now, and just to have it in the book and to remember it when times go normal again, you know, try to say, hey, can you remember when we did this and when we did that, you know? And I think that's a learning, but also what I think is important, how can we actually, I hardly believe it, because I would love if the Danish social service or hospitals and elderly, whatever it's called, you know, like Bortsorg. I mean, if we could do that in Denmark, I mean, get happier people, happier employees, happier elderly, and save a lot of money at the same time. But I just can't see how you can break it down, because you've got the middle management, and they're going to help the structure to stay in place. So you really need this, everything need to be burnt down, and then we need to build it up again. I remember Sabine Kluge talk about this factory in Berlin. I lived 2 years in Berlin, and I drove past this, and I know it's a very exclusive building, and at least the ground, the soil is worth a fortune. And Siemens at that time was still building, producing things there. And what they did, as I remember it shortly, was that they sort of took out all middle managers. I mean, the challenge was, what they were told was that there's this alternative. Either we produce it in China, or we produce it here. And if we're going to produce it here, you have got to tell us how to do it cheaper. And then, as I understood it, they broke down all the middle managers and made self-controlling teams, you know, and that way they saved a ton of money. And
they leverage a lot of energy. Yeah, they had so much energy in this factory, but still, it's not changing Siemens at all. It's changing just the one situation in that hall that you know exactly where you pass by, but they had to build walls around it that they don't destroy that experiment. It's now spreading through Siemens, but I still think we were far away from getting a situation where we all what we all dream of, like lower hierarchies, less hierarchy, more self-organization. It's still a vision, and I don't really think that Corona will help us to get there.
Okay, but still, we just have 1 hour today. We won't solve the world's organizational problems, but maybe just give some advice and help to those people who are out there and watching. So what to do next for this time, and then in 2 weeks we meet again and say what to do next in 2 weeks. So
I will share 2 tips very quickly, and then I'll shut up for the rest of the call so everyone gets a chance as well and everything. So number 1 is pay attention to what's already been done. Enterprise 2.0 and all the digital tools have been going on for 15 years. So locate the people who have been doing it, locate the champions, the ambassadors, the people who live this way already, and use them as your hand holders to help you dive in and step in. They are your essential guide. This is not new. A bunch of us have been doing it already for a long while. So learn on what they have done, learn on how they have coped with working distributedly, and open up to what people have in terms of those tools. And the second tip is that when you do that tactically for everyone to settle in, build a specific innovation team that looks into what's working, what's not working, so that when things settle down, they can go back and say, this is what we need to carry on doing, and this is what we need to change. So there needs to be 2 tracks, one of them tactical, and another one is strategic. Find for support of what's already there, and get someone to capture already, someone or a group of people to capture what it's going on right there. So along with the lines of what Kurt suggested about stories and everything else, but also practices. It's about modeling new behaviors. So capture those, and also the things that don't work so that you can address them. And now,
as I'm on my way to the Working Out Loud kickoff meeting that we have at 7 o'clock, where Carter just went over, I would add to the list of recommendations to look at Working Out Loud, because Working Out Loud is how to survive in the digital workplace, and Working Out Loud helps you to survive the situation like we have now. And people who are familiar with Working Out Loud, as we meet them every day here, they are really good with that situation. People that never heard of it, that never learned about the tools and the mindset that's behind it, and find the people who are leading since 15 years, like you said, Luis, that makes it so much easier to adapt to the new situation. So my advice would be, start a Working Out Loud circle. Buy a book by John Stephan.
One of the things I'm trying to do in our organization is separate out what I would call new ways of working versus new modes of working. And by that, I mean, most of what's been talked about here is new ways of working. And that would be permanent changes. What are the things that are happening that we've had to adapt to that we will keep and be permanent? But some of the things we've adapted to because of the situation will revert back, because in my organization, we do a lot of conferences and training and things like that. And a lot of those are just naturally better live, together. So if this is a temporary situation, how do we build plans in place to detect when to switch back and forth between these 2 modes of operation? Because the virus will probably be coming back several times in waves before we ever get around to having vaccines. And so for a lot of organizations, I think they're going to have to switch back and forth. So how do we capture what we've learned so we have these sort of detection signals out there that say, okay, now's the time to switch back again, and here's the plan for executing. And we run, pandemic drills just like we would run fire drills, where we have a day where everybody works from home just to practice, and and that sort of thing. That's what I'm working on right now.
Yeah. If I have to say something, two things is, one thing I think we, with a certain success, I did it many years ago, explained to the CEO in the company I was working for how the ERP system at that time was working and how we could do. I think we had the very early email system and how we actually could communicate. And I walked into the CEO's office, I didn't slam this, I locked the door behind me, and I showed him what it was, so he did not end up looking a fool. So he was the one knowing about what was going on. I think so. So I think this help to top managers. I think that is important. The other thing that I saw recently is the mind shift change. Isabelle de Klerk shared on LinkedIn a story where with the kind of workshops he was doing with 2 by 5 people. How one group was allowed to sort of look at each other around the table. They were not allowed to talk, but they were allowed to write what they were doing. The other group were only allowed to communicate with Post-it notes, which were supposed to be like emails. And I don't have enough time, but I'm just sort of saying the mind shift is very, very important here. And the last thing is, as I had said already, I think we need to document the good things that are done now to be able to remind management later on what's going on. That was my
I think David and Dennis have a good point there in that being able to switch modes. It's not just you're going to permanently change to something else, but you want that flexibility, that agility in the organization to decide what modes do we have and what do we switch back and forth on. So David, you were saying something about society and then the changes that are affecting that. How do you see that happening?
I just think that there's a lot of smaller businesses that are actually discovering that home working works and this kind of collaboration works. I was talking to my accountant this morning. She'd never heard of Zoom 3 weeks ago. Now she's having a Zoom meeting with clients 3, 4, 5 times a day, and she's actually thinking about running her business in a totally different way. And I think there'll be a lot of change that gets triggered by the changes that are going to happen in society as a result of this, all the businesses that fail, all the change in behaviour that will occur. So I think there are going to be big factors at work.
Let me pick up on those 2 comments because my recommendations were going in that direction. From an individual point of view, my advice would be to just understand that you can work in a more flexible way. It doesn't have to be all remote. It doesn't have to be all at the office. It can be whenever you want, depending on what tasks you need to do, what kind of focus you need, what if you need to work from a coffee shop, or if you want to work at home in your pajamas, or if you want to go to the office. We should have that flexibility and that liberty. And those that had it already, we didn't have a lot of issues with adapting. The only issue would be that we are used to doing other things, going outside, and now we can. So that's the only factor. So I'm more interested, not from an organizational point of view, but from an individual point of view, because to many of my colleagues and to many of my friends, I know that this will be the times where they understand that they can work from wherever they want. And for them, this is a very new concept. And again, it's not generational, it's not age related, okay? The second advice is if you have some free time, reach out to friends or people that you know that have small businesses, because they will take the toll. And as David was saying, I'm also seeing a lot of them trying to reinvent themselves. Even if things that you gave, someone gave the piano example, even in things like teaching arts, where typically you do it in a studio with students there, I'm seeing people reinvent it because they know that if they're not there for a couple of weeks or for a month or 2 months, their businesses will go out. So also for them, I think it's an opportunity to try to reinvent, try new things, because they have nothing to lose. And I definitely think that we will see a change there.
I would completely agree with you, Anna. And I also agree with your comment, Louis, at the beginning. So document everything. This would be also my advice, so that you come later back to it. And I'm let's say, with all this story, I'm still very optimistic, because I see a lot of things that happening now. It's our maybe once in a lifetime chance to cross the chasm. Yeah, I mean, now you have all the people, all the laggards that usually they wouldn't go to these tools. You have them on board, so don't leave them alone. Yeah, give them a hand and show them the example. So just to give you one example, which is not work related, I now have my mother who never wanted to use an iPad or something like this, and now we are communicating via it. Yeah, because I was able to show it, to give her the example, and she's really on it, and she is well exploring now the digital world. Well, this will stay. She will never go back. Yeah, she will make the use case, and it's the same. And I see in the company there are a lot of colleagues who were never interested in this topic. They start slowly, but they start. Yeah, and we are trying to give them a hand so that they will stay. And I strongly believe when we go back to normal, whatever normal is, yeah, it will stay, because the people will not forget it. They saw the advantage, and they yeah, they say they smelled it, and it will continue. Yeah.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned that, because my book group, who's been meeting together face to face for 20 years, is now going to have to meet by Zoom, and they're going to do their first Zoom meeting together in April. So it can, you know, sort of ripple, like the piano teacher that was mentioned, who now teaches via iPhone. Those are ripples in the pond.
And because this is chaos everywhere and we are all locked down with our families, it's our chance to switch a little bit the focus away from pure tools and have more people understand that the transformation is about tools and emotions and our common humanity and how we as humans relate to one another. So that's a unique opportunity. I hope we do not waste it.
Yeah, yeah. That well-being is, you know, I'm always thinking about what my employees are feeling and such. And I have a distributed global team, 7 different cities around the world. There's not possible that we will all get together physically in one space, just day in and day out. But you know, there was something that I've had friends for, you know, this particular group of friends outside of work for 20 years. Last night, we used to get together and play dominoes and board games physically now. Now we're all in different cities around the world. Well, so last night we played dominoes through one of the websites out there and on video chat on Zoom, etc. Right? We finally were able to connect on you know, on a personal level, 4 or 5 people at a time. I mean, I'm not talking about employee-wide kind of meetings and town halls and things like that, but just within your teams, do things which are not necessarily just work. You know, it's not a work meeting. We need to let the pressure valve off so people can just talk to each other. And something like a board game really does help, you know, distract from just, well, what do we talk about, right? So think of social breaks.
Social breaks, yeah. Just as a remark, we've talked mainly about middle management, top management, the impact that would have on organizations and so on. I found something really interesting. I do quite a bit of like employee training as well. I used to be very much the teacher from the classroom, tell you what to do. We've had to move online. We've had to adapt to the way we work, like put in a lot more breaks. But rather than function as a teacher, I now just give them some of the tools as they need them, but I let them discuss. It becomes far more collaborative. The collaborative learning experience it's really interesting to see how how that is forced to evolve. I don't know if you've had experience with that with your customers. And also another thing that I'd like to say, like the employees, there's just so much knowledge there that they have, that they bring to the table. That is, I think, again, middle management is overlooking that. And by using this collaborative approach, I find all these different ideas that go in every direction. And okay, it's and it then becomes self-organized through these virtual rooms that we are creating now. But it's very interesting to look at that situation. So my point would be is like maybe we can give more credit to these lower level employees as well. What can we do? Will this coronavirus actually make them more important, like what they're saying in the in restaurant industries and so on? Now a lot of more value is given to these people that before were never seen before. I think that's also an opportunity that we can look at, and how we can better make the organizations function by giving more credit to these people.
We still have people who haven't said anything yet, so I'm just Carsten, Igor, Shweta. Maybe you have something to add.
Got no problem with that. So I'm trying to learn also from my children who struggle with homeschooling, and also trying to learn from other groups than the groups in business, like my band. Of course, we cannot meet. So sometimes it helps to look at other types of groups than those one in large corporations. So not more to add here.
Yeah, hi everyone, Shweta here. I am extremely excited about this time, primarily because I was leading digital workplace at Bridgestone earlier, and all these conversations used to come up and nobody would pay attention. And like everyone mentioned, that this was, like Anna mentioned, that this wasn't really about age or generation. This was really not ever about frontline or non-connected employees who weren't actively interested in engaging in this. But now it suddenly is opening up and people are going, no, we have always been ready. We were just not willing to, you know? So I'm really glad that this is going to shake things. I'm also very happy to hear that the CEOs or the C-suite is going to be at the same, like Lee mentioned, I think, at the same level as the rest of us when they are on Zoom. So there's none of that, you know, they're just as human as the rest of us. So I'm very glad for this conversation.
So who's next? Who hasn't said anything at the end? So John, Lee, Jane.
Dion.
I just,
When can we talk again?
You know, if we were able to weave all of these comments and examples together, it's quite a lovely tapestry. It's a simplification and refinement of the things we've been talking about for the last 10 years or so. Of course, for my shameless self-promotion bit, it's I think a meta-experiment in what I've called hierarchy. I think it's going to show up all of the opportunities and the problems. I think it's going to make intelligent hierarchy much, much more essential. I don't think it will make everything all flat and equal. There are lots of people that don't want to take responsibility or just do a good job with what they're tasked to do. At the same time, there's a power shift underway that's clear. It raises the bar for everybody in the ecosystem to take more responsibility and be more conscious of what they do, why they do it, and so on. So it's really exciting times. I love seeing all of you together because I think we all know each other, and it's kind of really cool. I think that online working together is actually going to evolve pretty rapidly, as people practice and as people like us help people get more effective. And I think in many cases, not all, it will be shown to be as effective or more effective than holding meetings in real life. People can't talk over each other the same way. You know, the notes are kept and so on and so forth. So this also is very exciting to me.
I just put up a link on our chat that I wanted to share with you later. It's a summary of a certain dimension of my research over the last 10 years. And if you can take a moment and look at it later, you'll see it shows that from 2008 up to present, the digital capabilities in organizations are really high, the digital capabilities. You'll see at the bottom of the chart, the degree of management that is senior management that is open and participative has not gone over 20% for the last 4 or 5 years in regular annual surveys. It is stagnating, as are certain types of work practices, work cultures, one being letting employees contribute actively to business plans, express disagreement with what management says. These work practices have stagnated. I personally, being an optimistic person, I do think that what's happening to us now is going to bring about change, significant change. And I think we have to be patient and slow in expecting it to happen and just simply help people as much as we can around us, but not get too much caught up into all of our digital ways of doing things. And here's what you should learn to do. I think we have to just be with people and have a certain amount of patience. So that's my final take, Bjorn.
Jane, if I can add that as a question, because I would understand that in a personal, in an individual company, I would also say be slow. But looking at a change curve, for me, we are on a tipping point. And if we are not strong and fast now, it might just tip back. So being slow and fast, as Dion has just written it, for me, I guess we have to have it both.
Yes, I see what you mean, Harold. I think that when I'm talking about us being fast, I'm seeing so many of us and many people around the world putting out all this advice on what people should do. That's actually what I'm thinking. Maybe I didn't express myself very well. All of us giving all this advice. And when I talk about being slow, I mean patient in waiting for real change to take place. Because I do agree that there's a tipping point. And in fact, the chart that I put up there was the trigger for my current research about the gig mindset inside organizations, because I saw the power individuals have from a digital viewpoint and the lack of being able to use it inside organizations. So I agree with you. We have to work in a concrete